Welcome back to Mostly Growth, the number one podcast in product monetization. The era of price wars seems to be upon us, or at least could be upon us. Only CFO, who we both follow on X, posted, "The ROI I get from Claude has broken my brain on all vendor renewals. You want me to pay 2x what we pay for Claude for your little workflow tool? I've never pushed harder on pricing and threatening to churn in my life." And I don't think it's just him. I keep hearing there's a lot more pressure on existing SaaS companies. They want to keep these renewals. Not only can they not get away with price increases to the same extent they used to, but many of them are being pushed down on price.
Yeah, and I think Claude and OpenAI are used to actually augment workflows and do stuff that you couldn't before. But even more so, it's great to have a stalking horse there to say, well, we're using this over here, and I can't really substantiate paying that if I'm paying this.
The history of SaaS is filled with price increases. People usually start cheap and then they gradually, notch the price higher and higher as they grow. I mean, there's been a lot of instances out there in tech and non-tech of price wars and price declines over time. So like cloud computing is a big example that comes to mind for me. Like I remember the cloud wars of like the 2010s, right? Where Google, AWS, and Microsoft, they were all competing for market share and just one-upping each other on how low they can go on price.
I mean, I yearn for the DoorDash Grubhub price wars of like 2021, where you could get a burrito delivered to your house and they would pay you to eat it.
We might be coming back to those days. Grubhub is going to eat the fees. Don't you remember?
Oh, yeah. But in all these price wars, though, Kyle, the money has to be subsidized from somewhere, right? Even if I like the benefit, don't get me wrong. I'm welcoming one of these, but it has to come from somewhere.
Let's get into a few other examples, right? So streaming, right? Netflix was at $12.99 a month. Disney Plus didn't launch until 2019, and they undercut Netflix in half. They could probably make it up in other business lines within Disney. Like this wasn't the only revenue stream, but what can happen or what often happens is like people do this to try to take share. They get really competitive, and then often like they change their mind over time, or they realize like, hey, maybe we can make it up in ad revenue or like find some other revenue streams to offset it.
The streaming wars are an excellent example because they also know that if you get a bunch of people on the platform and the content's really good and seasons of shows that you're already socially engaged into keeping up with, like Game of Thrones with HBO Max, then they jack up the price on you later.
And if they can get you watching more Disney, they can get you going to the parks, and maybe they can get you going to Disney movies. And, there's a whole kind of strategic play around this. I think the other example that comes to mind for me is like airlines. I think also in the 2010s, there was the rise of all these like budget airlines like Frontier, Spirit, that kind of all popped up out of nowhere. And the majors responded by actually, they didn't like lower the price of their core tickets, but they had an interesting segmentation strategy where they said, we're going to launch a basic economy seat that's going to be a lot cheaper, and we'll advertise that price if you're on Google Flights. But then we're going to charge the same amount for like a normal seat.
I think it also led to a lot of unbundling of the services you would typically get on an airline. For instance, if you wanted to bring a bag, even a carry-on, they were going to charge you now. Optically, it would look like it was 40% cheaper. Once you add back all the stuff that you would normally expect, it ends up being about at par.
There's different ways this can play out. Like there can be price wars that are real price wars and just are a race to the bottom with everyone. And then there are price wars that are a little bit more strategic, or I think the players are smarter in how they navigate that. So they communicate a lower price, but don't end up hurting all of their profitability. But I think so some signs that things are happening right now. So we talked about this Claude example and only CFO. Another example that comes to mind is that HubSpot announced new pricing for the Breeze customer agent, which seems to me kind of like an Intercom competitor that resolves your customer support interactions. Their EVP of operations, Chris Hogan, posted on LinkedIn recently about how they're moving it from $1 per conversation to 50 cents per resolved conversation. So that actually means not only are they cutting the price per conversation in half, they're only making money when it's successful. So it seems to me like they're cutting price by like 70% maybe, and they're coming in at half the cost of what Intercom is charging for Fin. which to me is saying like we're going really hard to try to win market share here.
You also have to point out that HubSpot's platform has a lot more breadth than Intercom's does. It spans multiple departments and functions. So there has to be some play, I'm guessing here, Kyle. You correct me if I'm wrong, that they want to get you on multiple products here.
There's a lot of other business lines that HubSpot can treat as its profit center. And this probably like keeps you more locked into the HubSpot ecosystem. And so like if you're buying the Breeze agent, you probably are also buying their CRM and their marketing and all of these other products.
Side note though, like this customer support area, this is like a knife fight. You've got Decagon, you've got Sierra, you've got Intercom, now you got HubSpot. Like they're coming out of the woodworks here.
It's becoming increasingly easy to launch a product or at least like have the same features. And so then you have to think about how are you going to win? And part of that might be competing on price. If you were in this market and you're Intercom and HubSpot just says they're going to undercut you in half, what do you do?
I think I stay the course, honestly, because I don't want to permanently set a new floor on what everyone's going to charge. And I already know them providing high value. I think what gets lost in a lot of these pricing conversations is the value you're providing. Like if you look at what IKEA and Walmart were trying to do, they weren't trying to be the cheapest, right? They wanted to be the least expensive on like a per unit of value of what they would provide. And I don't think anybody wants to be perceived as like the Spirit Airlines version of customer support. That's going to erode margin over time if you're not giving your customers like a great experience.
What are some of the other markets where you're seeing like price pressure or increasing price war behavior?
I'm seeing it in the ERP and core accounting market. And that's been a stalwart of being able to just increase prices by 6 to 8% every year, 6 to 8%, 6 to 8%, multi-year lock-in, hard to get around the NetSuites of the world. And a lot of these incumbents are well-funded coming in. They're offering some really sweetheart deals. There's even one company out there that's giving it away for free for the first year to certain startups.
They're giving away an ERP for free.
Yeah, I know one company that's giving it away for free.
You don't want to blow up their spot, but I'd take a free ERP.
You wouldn't even know where to park this thing in the driveway, Kyle. Some of these tools, though, like a starter package, you would say, like, and they're trying to get you at the point of where you would naturally go from a QuickBooks to a NetSuite, which usually happens around, call it 25 or 50 million in revenue. You're walking into a package that's minimally 40 to 50,000. And so a lot of these companies were discounting it down to 20, 25, 30. But then a couple newer players raised even more money. And they're like, how about 5,000 for the first year? You're like, holy shit, this is actually gonna be cheaper than what I was paying for QuickBooks. Like mathematically, it's completely upside down.
Hey, thanks for listening. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Ali and the team at Tabs are building something that directly addresses one of the biggest headaches I see finance teams deal with today. Pulling data from your ERP, your CRM, your FP&A tools, and your usage systems and actually making it all work together. If you're running usage-based pricing or complex contracts, you already know how this usually plays out. Contracts live in one system, usage data lives somewhere else, billing happens in another tool. RevRec gets layered on top at month end, and finance ends up just reconciling everything by hand to close the books. This is exactly the problem Tabs was built to solve. Tabs is an AI-native revenue platform built for controllers and CFOs. It brings together data from your ERP, CRM, and real product usage into a single system of record. From there, it automates billing, collections, and revenue recognition without finance having to duct tape workflows together every month. If usage-based revenue is core to your business, this is the future of how billing and RevRec get done. Go check them out at tabs.com/run. That's tabs.com/run.
When I looked to set up my first CRM at Growth Unhinged, I knew I wanted something that was actually AI first. The world has evolved. Most CRMs are still stuck in the 90s. I found Lightfield, the CRM that remembers everything and does the work for you. It joins all my sales calls, reads my emails, and has the full context on every account. At this point, Lightfield knows my deals better than I do. I haven't had to set up a single CRM dashboard. Instead, I simply ask Lightfield questions like, which deals in my pipeline are most likely to close, or who do I need to to follow up with today. It even automatically prepares me for meetings with a personalized daily briefing, and setup was quick and surprisingly painless. Lightfield is my sales coach, RevOps analyst, therapist, EA, all in one. See Lightfield for yourself with a 14-day free trial. Connecting data from your inbox takes just 5 minutes, and you can migrate in under an hour. Go to lightfield.app, that's LIGHTFIELD.app, and use code MOSTLYGROWTH to get 3 months free. I've been writing my newsletter, Growth Unhinged, for exactly 5 years. When I went all in on it last year, I quickly decided it was time to make the switch to beehiiv. Honestly, I wish I'd done it even sooner. Switching to beehiiv was seamless, but the difference is real. Excellent deliverability, more customization with their AI website builder, built-in automations, and no 10% tax on my revenue. As a data nerd, I especially love beehiiv's dashboards and built-in surveys. My open rates jumped from 35% to nearly 50% after switching to beehiiv, and I'm not looking back. Beehiiv is built for people who actually take newsletters seriously. If you care about owning your audience, it's a no-brainer. Try beehiiv for free by going to beehiiv.com/Kyle. That's beehiiv.com/KYLE. Use code Kyle30 for 30% off your first 3 months. When people are hungry, they're well funded, they're going to do what it takes to try to get market share, especially if it's a sticky product that you don't want to rip out once you know it's working. I have a Chase Sapphire credit card, and they have this deal with Whoop where you get a $359 rebate. And so you can buy a new Whoop in a 1-year subscription, and that is the exact price that you get refunded. I mean, Whoop is very well funded. They just raised more money. They're betting that once you have the device, you're going to want to keep it and you're going to be locked into their ecosystem. And we're in this environment where like you're incentivized to do what it takes.
Took me a second there. I thought you were describing some like elaborate like return fraud scheme that you and your friend were in, where he was going to somehow turn like a free $359 into actually getting $359.
He's not returning. He's going to use it. He's just going to activate it once his old one's done.
I don't want to sound like I'm just saying like this is a bad idea. I'm not saying that at all. These people are generally smart people, and they've calculated, I'm guessing people at Whoop and even some of these ERP companies, I hope they did this. They calculated what the lifetime value of one of these customers is over time.
In March, they announced a $575 million funding round at a $10 billion valuation, right? They're competing against like Apple Watches, Garmin has, there's all these wearables, but I think that they're betting that once you have the data in their platform, you want to keep the data within the same ecosystem. They're kind of saying, hey, we're going to really subsidize hard on adoption to get people into the Whoop ecosystem.
Yeah, that totally checks out. Get them in, get them using the product, and then hopefully retain them over time.
Today, I want to talk about like what can you do in a price war? So not really like, should you start a price war? But if you're in a market, you're minding your own business, building a great company, trying to compete on value, and all of a sudden, a competitor like HubSpot comes in and says, we're going to charge half of what Intercom is charging. Like, what do you do? And so we'll lay out the different paths available and like when each path is right for you.
What's the first step here? Because I'm shaking in my boots, especially if HubSpot's showing up with even though their market cap's down a bit, they're bigger than me.
Decide if you should fight it. Like, should you fight the war? Are you positioned to win the war? And the big takeaway for folks is like, don't fight a war you can't win, because someone else out there might have a lower cost structure, a bigger balance sheet, a better ability to monetize in other products. And as low as you go to try to compete against them, they can just go even lower. Like they'll just drop the price down to zero if they need to. And so things can really spiral quickly. You don't want to get into that spiraling behavior if you are not positioned to win.
Hell has a basement, as we've said on other shows.
ERPs can go down to free. So like, are you positioned to win? And is this something even worth fighting? So sometimes a competitor drops a price when they're desperate. Maybe their product doesn't work as well. Maybe they're running out of cash. They need a story to convince their next investor to fund them. And sometimes like it does create noise. They do win some deals on price. But realistically, like you can still win at a higher price and it's just not worth responding to. And so I think for a lot of companies, it's really difficult to not want to respond. When you respond, you can really escalate things.
I think it's important to think about this from your competitor's shoes, but are they doing this out of desperation because they're losing? I think it's a very different response in calculus if they're doing it because they're well funded, they have a great balance sheet, they have other products that they can make even more money off of, versus like I know a couple of tools in the FP&A space that are not doing as well, and they're lowering prices because they're like, this is the only other strategy we think we can win with. And I was talking to someone who does have a really good product, and he's like, people self-select, I think, into one of these products based on like how good of a thing that they want. Like they weren't even going to be probably our customer anyway.
There's a talk track that you can use around this. So it's literally saying, hey, look, this competitor just dropped their price in half. If all you care about is price, that's fine. Go with them. They're going to be cheaper than we are. But ask yourself, like, are they going to be best positioned to serve your needs over the next like several years? Are they going to be innovating? Are they investing in their platform? Here are the things that we've launched in the last 6 to 12 months. Like, do you want a partner that's with you for the long haul, that's really investing in the experience? If so, like, we're going to be a better fit. But like, that's a decision that you can make. You can position it as like, create some FUD around why the competitor is lowering price in the first place.
I remember when we moved into this house, I was doing the home insurance for it. And so the guy gave me a quote and I was like, did I break a window? Like what happened? And so I went on to Lemonade online and I got a quote from them too. And so it's known for giving you really, really like competitive quotes. And I sent it back to the guy. And what he did is exactly what you're saying. He's like, CJ, if the only thing that you care about is price, and like what's baked into that statement is like, just made me feel like a total like asshole. If you care about your home and covering it and having someone to pick up the phone and call like me when something goes wrong rather than an automated agent, then you should go with our service. And he kind of like put the ball in my court. And I was like, of course I don't only, of course I don't only care about price.
Yeah, and I mean, for enterprises, like price is a factor, but realistically, it's about, does this fit in the budget? Like, is this something you want to stake your reputation on for buying? Like, price is not the only factor in a decision. And so, yeah, sure, procurement might try to beat you down, but if you're vendor of choice with the ultimate buyer, there's probably like more influence that buyer has than procurement has, even if procurement's trying to knock you down.
I have a friend who's in enterprise sales and he's like, I know whenever they bring in procurement, I've got them at certain companies because he's like, if they didn't already tell procurement that this is the tool they want, they wouldn't have been on the phone with me. Like we're so past the point of them evaluating. Like sometimes it can backfire and there are still like 2 or 3 other companies in the mix, but he's like, I usually know that they already selected us and they're just bringing in procurement at the end to see if there's a couple dollars off so I can hold the line.
So first, you want to decide if you should fight the price war. I think the second thing is find ways to win beyond just price. And so we talked about the insurance example, like they're going to try to win based on like peace of mind, like quality of service. There's a lot of different things that you can compete on that are not price related. I think for tech companies, like it often was, hey, we have these features. Here are features we have that our competitor doesn't have. Like that would be the talk track in the sales process. But now I think that the talk track needs to be much more around the outcomes you're able to deliver, the quality, the reliability, security. Like it's more around the experience for the customer rather than like checking the box on certain features.
Yeah, I think you have to make the customer see the forest through the trees or whatever the reverse of that statement is. But sometimes customers are just cheap, man. I don't know.
If you're an Intercom, like one of the things you could do is like work on a business case. If you as a company spend $10 per support to resolve a support ticket manually, and then you could spend, 50 cents per AI resolution with HubSpot or a buck with Intercom. If Intercom could say, hey, look, compare us head to head, one against another, see what percentage of responses we're able to resolve. If you're at 70%, HubSpot's at 50%, you can kind of do the math and be like, hey, actually, we save you, from a program perspective, we save you money because we solve more, and like AI is saving you a lot of money in the first place. So you could do that math. The other thing is you could start to say, all right, well, what matters on top of price? All right, how quickly you're responding to customers. What's the CSAT on the responses? How much AI hallucinates answers? Because you'd hate to not just give like customers like an answer that doesn't resolve a ticket, but give them the wrong answer. Like they're probably going to churn if you do that. Like there's probably the ways that you can educate the customer about what they should even be looking for in the first place, they might not have known they should even ask about.
I think as a company, you have to remember that you have more at bats than them at seeing what other companies are using your product for. So they may have this myopic view, just this one swim lane of how they're going to apply it. But if you show them the entire experience, and even better, if you can do what you said, like let them use it just for a couple of use cases, I think that shows the full breadth of the product.
So now we start getting into responding more directly. So once you've tried those two things, you might still find, all right, well, we don't have that much better of a product. We've tried winning on value, but like we are losing these deals because of price. And now you have to really figure out how to get down on price without like creating a super unprofitable business and also like now repricing your entire install base. And to me, that comes down to like picking your battles. So like where do you want to compete and where do you want to avoid competing?
I think some accounts are worth a lot more, not just in dollar terms this year, but lifetime value. And that's why it's important to know how well the company you're selling to is doing, right, Kyle? To understand, are they growing? Are they going through a good year, a bad year? Are they hiring a lot of people? Because that intel will better inform how you look at that customer, not just in the moment today, but to grow over time.
On the like product angle, if you're HubSpot, you can get in a price war on customer support resolution all day long. You probably don't want to get in a price war on your email marketing as well, or like your CRM. Like you don't want to get in a price war on every product, but for these products that are growth products, those are maybe areas where you're more willing to go. And so if you're if you're an Intercom, for example, I'd maybe think about, do we offer us a HubSpot replacement, like a CRM tool that you can drop and charge half the price that HubSpot charges? And like, are there places that you can pick your battles where you're actually holding firm on your core product, but you're making it up elsewhere? And a lot of times that's like going more directly after your competitors' customers.
And if you don't have the full platform, sometimes what you can do is partner with somebody else and come up with a compelling offering. So I know some ERPs that are going after the NetSuites of the world where they're saying, listen, we don't have a fully baked like inventory management system yet if you make stuff in the real world. So you can use our core GL, and we partnered with this other company over here. They're best of breed. They integrate together, and it's going to be cheaper than what you would get with NetSuite too. So on their own, it looks like, oh no, we have to go up against this, but together they're definitely better.
Yeah, I think this kind of bundling strategy ends up working quite well because you end up like getting a good amount out of the account. Like you've now just sold them multiple products. So of course, like you're willing to discount one. And I think this is how Microsoft gains so much market share for Teams, even though I would say Teams is like a shit product that's way worse than Slack. But like they bundled it with Microsoft Office and kind of productivity tools. And like essentially it's free for the enterprise buyer that's already wanting the other stuff. That bundle is a compelling value prop.
This could have qualified maybe for a business blunder. 110-year-old Turkish grandma shares her secret to a long life and never once used Microsoft Teams.
5.2 million views for a takedown of Microsoft Teams. Wow. So you can compete across like using multiple products, using bundling. I think the other thing is picking your battles from a customer perspective. And so you got to know like where you've got some strengths. Are there specific kinds of customers that you serve really well? Maybe you have the best references there and your competitor can't serve those folks. Well, those are customers you really don't want to drop price for. But for ones that you know you don't have as much of an advantage for, like you could be much more strategic around some of these areas. So I think about like SMB customers, customers in growth markets where they're new verticals you're not in right now. I drop the price to try to win some lighthouse accounts in a new vertical. Like look for these places where you want to be much more aggressive.
You'd give me an example offline about Adobe. What happened there?
Adobe is an interesting player. I mean, they've got so many products. We actually had a portfolio company that was in a space that Adobe wanted to win. And Adobe ended up launching a competitor product and giving it away for free, essentially bundling it in with their existing product. And they had access to like the C-level decision makers. They were selling like a bundle that had 5 or 10 products in it. And it was like incredibly difficult to compete with. And I mean, they could afford to do it because even though they had a worse product, it felt like it was free to the customer and they were able to get to a higher level decision maker. So like even if the more junior person wanted the best of breed tool for their job, their boss was essentially like, no, we've already paid for this. It's in our plan. Why would we duplicate spend?
That's a tough argument when like the feature's already there and your boss is like not the one who uses it every day.
Exactly. And so sometimes in those cases, like you need to just find a home for like you would find Adobe's biggest competitor that has a product gap and try to either partner with them, to your point, with, with bundling, or maybe get acquired by them because the value proposition is stronger.
What happens next? Like how do you play this forward to the ultimate end here?
A lot of these price wars are very short term minded. So, like, they're very reactive. Like, right? You see the competitor dropping price, you're in this deal, you get this intel, you freak out. You probably have like an emergency exec meeting and you start making like one off decisions about what to do. And now all of a sudden, you kind of have a strategy without having really been strategic about developing your strategy. Big thing for a lot of companies that are in these situations is like they need to plan out what's the end game to get back to where they want to be from a price standpoint. So, like if you're that ERP that's giving away the first year for free, how are you going to get back to a realistic price point? Because you've got to have an LTV that's going to pay for the customer acquisition costs, all the onboarding costs. You need to show growth for your investors too. So you can't just like keep giving away the product for free for forever. Hey, maybe I am willing to buy out a competitor's contract or offer the first year free, but the customer commits to a multi-year deal where year two is the normal price. And so they basically get half off for a 2-year deal. And then you look at like, are there enough switching costs that would be really hard for them to go do this again in 2 years time? And like, you want to make sure that that is the case before moving ahead with these things. But like for each of these scenarios, plan out not just what you're deciding now, but what the LTV looks like.
The death spiral to me, like from a CFO's perspective, what you don't want to see is you are giving away the product essentially for free. You have like a highly paid sales force, so you're staffing people against this too. But you also have to pay extra to the sales reps to keep their heads in the game because the deal sizes are so low. So your effective commission rate on these deals are massive. And we had said on a prior episode, Kyle, it is a real tactic to give away a product and like that's your cost of sales and marketing. It's just giving away the product. Like in your perks bundle, they don't have to hire a salesperson to go and sell Lovable if you can just give it away on Growth Unhinged. But what you don't want to have is to be doing that, but you're doing it through the channel, which is the rep and the person who's paid a ton of money. Like that dog doesn't hunt in the short term. So you have to think about what's your short term, medium term, and then what are the long term unit economics you think you can get back to on an account level. It can't just be like, hey, as a company, we eventually want to get to this pie in the sky. You do have to think about it at the account level starting year one.
A good example is we had, Keith from Lightfield on recently building an AI native CRM. He told us that, he's charging per seat for their AI native product, even though there's a lot of costs for all of the consumption and like the AI capabilities. And he's willing to be maybe have lower margins or maybe negative margins for certain customers because he sees CRMs as a pretty sticky product and there's a lot of expansion potential. Like there's a lot of other things they can do once you have them as your core system of record and CRM. I haven't seen their roadmap, but my guess is like they have a roadmap to better monetize customers over time as they're now having like the full context of every account and they're like just well positioned to do a lot more for their customers.
Yeah, he's playing a long-term game where he knows the information he's going to get is going to put him at some sort of strategic high ground that he'll be able to monetize at a higher rate. And if none of this works, Kyle, just sell to whoever dropped the price.
If none of this works, just like buy software instead of selling it.
And now we've got our segment Business Blunders. Let's see what the fellas cooked up.
CJ, I've got a multi-axis crime to report.
There's nothing I get more excited about in my day.
Not just a y-axis crime, a multi-axis crime.
Is this our first multi-axis crime?
This guy, Peter Gostev, posted on X about something that I thought was fake, and then it actually seems to be real. Gartner released a Magic Quadrant in November of last year about generative AI model providers, and they map companies based on their features and then future potential. And in the upper right of this quadrant is like OpenAI, Alibaba, Google, IBM, and then like worse than all of those players is Anthropic. Like, if you're Gartner, how do you not look at this and be like, people paid us for this research?
Yeah. Like, did they use a computer to research this? I love this comment from Trent Griffin. He says, the key determining factor is how much revenue Gartner generates from the company. Oh no, look at that Gartner stock price.
All of these companies are emerging.
Yeah, a $30 billion revenue emerging leader.
Who's Writer? I love that Writer has more vision than Anthropic.
I really want to like print this out and remember it.
Good for you, Writer.
Mostly Growth is a Mostly Media production. Executive produced by Ben Hillman. That's me. Additional production by Steve Sarasoli. Nothing said on this podcast is intended to be business or investment advice. It's the sole opinion of CJ, Kyle, and Ben. Just some guys who love talking growth. Mostly. If you like this podcast, hit subscribe and give it 5 stars. It only takes like 2 seconds and our algorithm overlords love it. Drink water, call your mom, and have a great day.